I folded that napkin 3 times, just like Mama used to. Tight corners, edges lined just right. That little folded iris never meant much to anybody but me. But I guess that's true for most of the things I hold close these days. I sat there in my car, engine running, AC humming soft, thinking about how this would go. Baton Rouge heat was making my knees ache something awful, but love's got a way of making even pain feel worth it. I'd worked double shifts for years, missed sleep, missed meals, missed birthdays. So this gift, it was mine to give. I pictured it again, him coming down those stairs, seeing the car, shaking his head with that goofy smile he used to have when he was little, saying, "Mama, you didn't have to do this." I imagined that hug, too, the kind I hadn't gotten in a long while, the kind that made you feel like home still meant something. I pulled into the lot outside their apartment. Modern place, all glass and steel and silence, no front porch. No neighbor kids running around with bare feet, just cold curb appeal. Quindell came down with his phone in his hand, barely glancing up. Not even a, "Hey, Mama," just a flat, distracted, "You good?" I stepped out, keys in my hand. "I got something for you, baby." He looked at the car, my car, now his. A modest used Toyota hybrid, paid for with years of careful stacking, saving, and sacrificing. His eyes didn't light up. His mouth didn't open with awe or gratitude. He squinted. "Mom, this is cheaper than her handbag." I blinked. My fingers tightened around the key ring, but I didn't say a word. Nalaya didn't even come downstairs. She was watching from the balcony, leaning against the rail, phone in hand too, with a smirk I'd seen before, on people who think pity is a performance. He took the keys without thanks. No hug, no weight behind the gesture, just routine, like I'd dropped off groceries, like I'd signed over another piece of myself. I stood there still smiling, even though it hurt something deep. The kind of hurt you don't cry about because crying feels like giving them a headline. Inside, I wondered, did I try too hard? Did I forget how to love from a distance? Later that night, I was invited to dinner, not by Quindell, by Nalaya. The invitation was digital, brief, with one of those "since you're in town" tones. I wasn't about to beg for a seat at a table I helped build, so I went. The restaurant was beautiful in that sterile kind of way. White linens, minimalist art, music that tried too hard to sound expensive. I got seated near the back, next to a couple of older ladies who spent most of the night talking about their grandkids. The table was right by the bathroom. I could hear the automatic flush every few minutes. Everybody else got champagne. I was handed water, no lemon. I watched Nalaya's parents get toasted, called pillars of the couple's growth. "Wouldn't be here without them," Quindell said, raising his glass. I smiled again, practiced, the kind that hides grit behind grace. No mention of me, no acknowledgement, not even a glance. I looked down at the napkin I'd folded, again, into an iris. I'd placed it carefully next to my plate. No one noticed. It was just linen to them. I sat back, letting the sounds of laughter fill the air. Forks tapped glasses, people snapped pictures. I sat still, feeling like a backdrop in a photo I was never invited to be in. He walked past me once, not stopping, leaned down and whispered, "Don't cause a scene." Like I was the threat, like my presence was the problem. I didn't speak. I didn't eat. My plate stayed full, my heart less so. I saw him once, barefoot in the kitchen at 5 years old, dancing while I made pancakes before my shift. I saw him in his cap and gown, hugging me so tight I couldn't breathe. I saw him now, across the room, smiling for a camera that didn't care who raised him. Mama once told me, sometimes you raise them so well they forget who lifted them. I believed she was wrong. I don't anymore. The night ended with me standing by the car, the same one I gave away that morning, the one that apparently didn't match a handbag. I looked at my reflection in the window, tired, but not broken. I stepped away slowly, letting the night wrap around me. If love has a price tag now, maybe I paid too much. The pew felt colder than I remembered. Maybe it was the air, maybe it was the space beside me left empty. Again, I had sent him a message the night before, "See you Sunday." But like the rest of the week, it sat unread. Same text I'd sent last Sunday, and the Sunday before that. Sometimes I wonder if it even made it to his phone, or if I was just sending prayers into a void. I wore my best hat, the soft gray one with the satin flower on the side. Folks said I looked sharp, like always. I smiled and nodded like always. Nobody asked why I was alone. Maybe they knew not to. Pastor Rivers gave a sermon about honor, about the people who raise you, who show up for you when no one else will. I sat there, trying not to let those words hit too hard, but they did. Every syllable felt like it was pointing at me, then past me. After service, I didn't stay for coffee or hugs. I slipped out the side and drove home, windows down, radio off. The wind brushing my cheeks let me pretend I wasn't crying. Later that evening, I got a message from Thurman. He helps out with events. Nice boy, respectful, raised right. Said he needed to show me something. I didn't know what he meant until the file came through. It was a draft. The original engagement toast, the one Quindell had written before Nalaya's people edited it. There, in black and white, was a paragraph about me, about how I raised him by myself, about how I worked night shifts, how I skipped meals to pay for his school trips, how everything he has started with a woman who never let him go hungry, even when her fridge was half empty. But in the video they posted online, that paragraph was gone. I watched it 3 times. Nalaya stood there glowing, thanking their mentors, their chosen family, her friends who stepped in where others fell short. Quindell smiled and nodded like that made sense, like that was his truth too. I didn't hear Mom once. Just Creed family, our village, and those who believed in us. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat back in my chair, laptop screen burning into my face, and whispered to nobody. I wasn't even inconvenient enough to cut out. I was just deleted. 2 days later, I got mail from the DMV. I thought it was junk, maybe a renewal notice for something I forgot to cancel. But when I opened the envelope, my breath caught. It was a registration confirmation. The car, the one I gave him, had been officially filed under Quindell and Nalaya. No mention of me, no co-signer, no transfer of title from a parent, just theirs. I remembered signing those papers at the dealership, pen shaking in my hand from the arthritis that had been creeping in since my last year working at the hospital. He told me, "Don't worry, Mama, I'll handle the details." He did. I stared at the letter for a while before laying it flat on the table. My thumb pressed into the corner, dragging across the page, like maybe I could erase what it said, but it didn't budge. "Girl," I said out loud, "you didn't just give them a car. You gave them permission to forget you." That night, I didn't watch TV. I didn't call nobody. I sat at my kitchen table, the same one I'd cleaned for decades, surrounded by unopened mail and old receipts. I started writing a list: groceries, doctor appointment, cable bill. Then I flipped the paper over and wrote, "Things I've given away without a receipt. 1 car, 1 future, 1 son, 1 seat at the table." I sat back, pen still in my hand, and stared at the words. I wasn't angry. I was empty. Mama used to say, "When folks stop calling your name, it's 'cause they've already decided you ain't worth remembering." I thought she was being dramatic, but tonight it didn't sound like bitterness. It sounded like a warning I ignored. I folded that paper up and slipped it into my Bible. Tucked it right behind the 23rd Psalm, not for them to find, for me. So when the world tries to tell me I imagined the forgetting, I have something to hold. Sometime after midnight, I walked out to the back porch and sat under the porch light. I used to sit out there and dream about Quindell's future. Now I just let the breeze carry the hum of the night. My notebook lay on my lap. I opened to a fresh page and wrote the title, What They Don't Know I Kept. The coffee had gone cold. I wasn't even halfway through it when I stopped scrolling. My thumb hovered above the screen, eyes locked on a cousin's Facebook post like it slapped me across the mouth. Can't wait to celebrate this classy power couple next weekend. There it was, a polished photo of Quindell and Nalaya standing in a sun-drenched garden, looking like they'd just stepped out of a bridal magazine. No mention of the date, but the comments gave it away. You two deserve all this. See y'all Saturday. Such a blessed union. My heart didn't drop. It just stopped, froze right there in my chest. I checked my messages. Nothing. My email, empty. Junk folder, clean. I even opened my mailbox outside. Dust and credit card offers. I stood there on my porch, phone in hand, and said it out loud to nobody. My own son is getting married, and I wasn't invited. I didn't cry. My hands trembled, but my voice stayed steady. They didn't forget, I whispered. They chose. Later that afternoon, I tried calling him. It rang once, then went to voicemail. I didn't bother leaving a message. He wouldn't call back, not after how they'd been moving lately. I sat in my living room for a while, staring at the TV without turning it on. Then I called Loretta, an old friend of mine who still talked to folks on both sides. They're doing a curated list, girl, she said. It's supposed to be intimate. Intimate? I laughed, short and sharp. You mean small enough to leave out the woman who raised him? Silence on her end. It's not personal, Lavora. It's just... Nalaya's got a vision, you know. Oh, she had a vision, all right. One that didn't include me in the frame. I hung up, walked over to my phone contacts, and deleted Quindell's number from my favorites list. It was a small thing, but it felt like I'd just cut a cord. Not the kind that gives life, but the kind that drains it. A few days passed before a new message came in. This time from Nalaya's assistant, some girl named Brittany. We'd love to have you join us for the pre-wedding dinner, just a small courtesy event. Courtesy. I showed up, not to please them, but to please the woman I used to be. I wore a long navy dress pressed with care, pearls, no makeup, just lip balm. I walked into that hall with my head held like I owned my own name. They sat me near the kitchen, far end of the room. Could smell the grease and hear every clatter of pots. People toasted, laughed. A live violinist played some jazz too fancy for folks who'd grown up on Mahalia. Then it happened. A young man, dressed too sharp for his manners, walked by and paused. Ma'am, could we get some more napkins over here? He didn't ask. He assumed. The table went quiet. All those polished plates and golden centerpieces suddenly didn't shine as much. Quindell looked at me, didn't say a word. And Nalaya? She chuckled. She's just family helping out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam my chair. I stood, looked the boy square in his face. I don't fetch. I gave. Then I turned, heels clicking against the floor like punctuation. No one followed me out. Driving home, I didn't blast music or cry into the steering wheel. I just drove, let the night wrap around me. I remembered Mama sitting in the back of our wedding because Orville's people didn't like her skin tone. I remembered the silence of that night, her hurt tucked behind a plate of coleslaw. I remembered thinking, I'll never let anybody do her like that again. And here I was. I made peace once, I said, gripping the wheel tighter. But I won't do it again just to be forgotten twice. When I got home, I lit the lamp on my writing desk, pulled out a new notebook, labeled it in thick black ink, Receipts and Reasons. And then I wrote everything I remembered about that dinner, every silence, every sideways glance, every little theft of dignity that they tried to make feel small. Before bed, I passed by my nightstand and picked up the frame. Quindell, 5 years old, gap-toothed and beaming, holding a stick with a paper star he'd made for me in Sunday school. I turned it face down. One tear rolled. I didn't break. I raised a man, I whispered. The world gave me a stranger. I heard the knock around 10 in the morning, not hard, not impatient, just enough to let you know someone was waiting on the other side. I opened the door, and a delivery man stood there with a box in hand, small, square, wrapped in silver paper with a white satin ribbon that looked more wedding than warm. Package for Ms. Gentry, he said. I signed. He left. I brought it to the kitchen table and stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Something about the way it sat there, polite, polished, pretending not to carry weight. Inside was a note card that read, "Thank you for supporting our union." No name signed, no handwriting, just printed text like a corporate memo. Beneath it, wrapped in tissue paper, was a wooden sculpture. Familiar. Too familiar. I pulled it out slow, like it might change before I got to the bottom. It didn't. It was mine. The carving. The same one I made months ago with my own hands. Smooth cedar, stained in deep brown, shaped into a cross intertwined with roots, a symbol passed down from my mother's hands to mine. It had taken me weeks, and now it was here again, returned like a party favor. But that wasn't the worst part. The tag read, "Gift from Mr. Gerald Creed." My initials were still etched into the back, barely visible under the gold leaf they'd added to make it more presentable. They didn't just take it. They erased me from it. That evening I put on my best dress, nothing fancy, just clean and quiet, and went to the rehearsal dinner. I wasn't planning to stay long. I didn't come for the food or the compliments. I came for truth. The room was loud with polished folks and poured drinks, laughter everywhere, cameras flashing, music humming just beneath the conversation. Nalaya glowed like a brand new penny, soaking up every compliment. Quindell was making his rounds, shaking hands like a politician. I waited until I caught his eye. He came over, reluctant, smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I need a minute," I said. We stepped just outside the main room, near a hallway lined with pictures of people I didn't know and stories I wasn't part of. "You know that carving came from my hands, right?" I asked. He shifted, avoided eye contact. "It's just easier this way," he said. "Uncle G paid for the reception. He's important to Nalaya's family." I nodded. "Once. And I paid with 32 years of my life," I said, voice steady. "Was that not enough?" He didn't answer. He didn't even try. He walked back inside like he hadn't heard me. I stood there for a moment, alone in a hallway built for noise, and felt something settle inside me. Not sadness, not even anger, just resolve. I wasn't waiting to be thanked anymore. I was documenting. Later that night, I logged into my online banking. I hadn't checked in a few weeks. I didn't expect anything unusual. But right there, under recent transactions, was a payment labeled Vehicle Upgrade Deposit for $1,800. The receiving account? Nalaya Creed. I scrolled further. There were more, smaller withdrawals, some $300, some $500, all listed under vague descriptions like event prep and coordinator deposit. They went back 6 months. My name was on every one of them. Flashbacks hit in fragments. "Mama, just one more time, just till the check clears. Mama, we don't want you to worry. Mama, you always come through." And I had, over and over. I closed the laptop and sat still for a moment. Then I stood up, walked to my file cabinet, and pulled out a folder. Inside, printouts, receipts, bank transfers, dates, names. I labeled it. They called it love. I call it proof. Then I sat at my writing desk and pulled out a fresh piece of paper, a letter. "Dear Quindell," I began, "you used to hold my hand when you couldn't sleep. Now you hold silence like it's protection. I wrote about the piano lessons, the late-night hospital runs, the rent payments he never asked for, but always accepted. I wrote about the birthday parties I threw on a nurse's salary and the Christmas when all I could afford was a toy from the thrift store. and he smiled like it came from Macy's. I don't want an apology, I ended. I want distance that respects the math of what I gave. I folded it carefully and placed it in my Bible behind Mama's funeral program. Next morning, I showered, dressed, and grabbed the wooden sculpture. I didn't wrap it. I didn't leave a note. I drove straight to the Creed's house and left it on their front steps, face down, initials up. You don't get to wear my legacy like decoration, I said out loud before walking away. The night before the wedding, I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in hand, thumb hovering over the message I'd typed. Safe travels tomorrow, baby. I hit send. The message never delivered. At first, I thought maybe his phone was off, but something in my gut didn't sit right. So I opened Facebook. Quindell's profile was gone, from me at least. His page that used to be filled with fishing photos, workout selfies, and his messy captions. Gone. I checked Instagram. Blocked there too. Even Nalaya's mama had unfollowed me. This wasn't a glitch. This was a decision. I let out a bitter little laugh that didn't sound like me. Lord, I whispered, even during slavery, they kept records. I got none. I opened my notebook and wrote a single line across a blank page, blocked by my own blood. The next morning, I heard a knock on the door. It was Miss Velma from down the street, handing me a glossy wedding program she picked up from the florist. Thought you might want to see what they're passing around, she said. I nodded and thanked her, then sat down at the kitchen table. The cover of the program had Quindell and Nalaya standing under a white arch, all polished and posed. I opened it, turning the pages slow, like peeling back something you know will sting. Family tree graphics, quotes about roots and legacy, childhood photos of Quindell. There was one picture, him at 5, sitting on the lap of Nalaya's daddy at some community center event. He held him for 5 minutes, I whispered. I held him for 5 years. My mind flicked back to the ER that night. Quindell fell off his bike and split his lip. Me standing in that hospital hallway, fighting with a nurse about paperwork that didn't process right. Insurance almost turned us away. I'd threatened to sleep on the floor in front of the triage window before they took him. But that part of the story wasn't in the program. I closed the booklet and slid it under a stack of mail marked Ignore. Seemed like the right place. That afternoon, my cousin called. Lavora, she said, voice low like she was about to scold me gently. Maybe just sit quiet and show love. It ain't worth the noise. I didn't argue. I'd heard variations of that my whole life. From church folks, from coworkers, even from myself. But after the call ended, I just sat there. And I thought about all the times I'd chosen silence because I thought it was noble. When Quindell moved into that apartment and didn't tell me the address. When they left my name off the church bulletin during homecoming service. When Nalaya started cooking my recipes and calling them hers at their Friendsgiving dinners. I didn't speak up. I let it go. Now here I was, erased, edited, and shut out. I stared at my hands, still firm, still capable, still mine. If silence was strength, I whispered, why do I feel so weak every time I hold my tongue? Later that evening, Miss Carol from Bible study sent me a few photos from the early wedding setup, decorations mostly. I swiped through until one stopped me cold, a large wooden frame labeled Mother Figures Who Shaped Quindell. Inside were pictures, Nalaya's aunt, a mentor from his summer internship, even a neighbor from the block where we used to live. But not me. I saved the image to my phone, opened my photo editor, and typed one sentence beneath it in bold white text. A picture frame can't erase DNA, baby. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I started organizing. One folder on my desktop. Images. Another, receipts. Another, things they won't take credit for. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me. That night, I sat by the window in my living room, lights off, screen glow reflecting back at me like a question I hadn't asked yet. My hand rested on my lap, phone in my palm. That same phone I once used to teach Quindell how to dial 911 in case something happened to me when he was little. Now it was the thing he used to pretend I didn't exist. My whisper wasn't a prayer. It was a record. Y'all stopped calling me Mom, but I never stopped being one. I took my time getting dressed that morning. The air felt thick, like it was holding something back. I laid the faded purple linen dress across the bed, same one I wore the day I walked across the stage to get my nursing degree, back when I still believed hard work earned you a place at the table. That fabric had outlasted my marriage, my old Buick, and the life I'd imagined. I ironed every crease with care, smoothed it out like I was tending to a wound. I wasn't dressing for their compliments. I was dressing for the girl I used to be, the one who worked overtime shifts and still came home to help with science projects, the one who didn't ask for thanks but deserved them anyway. My hands didn't shake like they did last week, not because I was at peace, but because I had decided. I folded my iris napkin one last time, slipped it into my purse, not for the table, for the moment it would matter. When I walked into the venue, everything smelled like money. That kind of rented wealth, just enough gloss to cover what's missing. I didn't need to be announced, didn't need a seat of honor. I just needed to see it with my own eyes. As I stepped through the double doors, I heard it. "Oh, that's Miss Gentry. Not Mom, just Miss Gentry," Nalaya said, light and sweet, like she was clarifying an allergy. Loud enough for the girl next to her to hear, soft enough to call it a misunderstanding if I made it a thing. Quindell stood 5 feet away and didn't say a word, didn't even glance in my direction, just sipped from a glass and nodded, like silence was neutral. I didn't stop walking, just took it all in, let it roll over me. "You stripped me of a title I earned with stretch marks and sleepless nights," I whispered to myself. A man in a blazer leaned over as I passed and smiled. "You must be one of the coordinators," he said. "Staff's doing a great job." I smiled back. Later, I wrote in my notebook, "Today they orphaned me on purpose." By the time dinner started, the tables had filled. I brought a dish with me, candied yams made from my mother's recipe. Took time, not money, but time always costs more. I set the dish down on the buffet table like everybody else, then took my seat near the wall. A young man, fork in hand, tried the yams and chuckled. "Tastes like something from a repast," he said. "Y'all know, old church funerals." Folks laughed. Nalaya leaned in and added, "It's cute, though, gives rustic nostalgia." Nobody asked where the dish came from. Nobody touched it again. I looked at the tray, still mostly full, and thought of Mama in her kitchen, mashing sweet potatoes by hand while telling me, "This feeds the body and the soul. That's why we pray before we eat." I didn't say a word. I packed the dish back into its container when no one was looking and carried it home that night, untouched. Back in my kitchen, I put the yams on the counter and stared at them. That wasn't food to them. That was pity, wrapped in foil. I thought about all the things they'd called old about me. My hair, my music, my way of speaking, my silence, my food, my God. They didn't see survival in my hands, just seasoning they didn't like. I opened my notebook and wrote, "They call it rustic. I call it survival. We made flavor out of scraps." I turned on my laptop, opened the wedding folder, deleted every picture they'd sent me, every image that had my name cut from the caption. Except one. There was a shot of my napkin, folded clean, placed perfectly beside an untouched wine glass. I saved that one. Then I started printing. Every transaction, every Cash App receipt, every text message that started with, "Can you help us just this once?" Every promise made, then rewritten. This wasn't for revenge. This was for clarity, for evidence. I wasn't going to yell. I was going to present. I picked up the napkin, folded tight, and placed it on my nightstand, not as decor, but as declaration. They think silence is surrender. They forgot I was born in a storm. I woke up before the sun did, the kind of morning where everything feels still, but not peaceful, just waiting. I took the purple linen dress out again. This time I starched it so clean it could stand on its own. The one they laughed at, the one I wore before Quindell was even old enough to spell his name. I laid it across the bed, smoothed the collar, then walked to my dresser and opened the top drawer. Mama's brooch sat exactly where I left it. Gold, oval, simple. I pinned it over my heart without blinking. Today, I said aloud, I don't need an invitation. I need my dignity. I picked up my purse, the one I always carried to funerals, courtrooms, and places where women had to hold their heads higher than the room wanted them to. I slipped in the folded iris napkin and tucked the flash drive behind it. Before I left the house, I stood in the mirror and rehearsed what I might say, not out loud, just with my eyes. By the time I got to the venue, everything was already in motion. People moving like pieces on a chessboard, confident they knew who belonged where. I stepped into the prep area, bright lights, chatter, the smell of hairspray and champagne, and then I heard her. She's still wearing that old dusty dress, looked like someone's grandma lost at the flea market. Nalaya's voice, low, sharp, with that sugar-coated edge folks love to excuse. Laughter followed. I walked in anyway, made eye contact, said nothing, not because I was scared, but because I was timing the silence. They were all dressed in beige and blush tones, satin and sequins, every curl in place, but none of it looked like truth, just costume. My purple linen, that held truth, that held funerals and graduations and night shifts. That dress knew me better than any of them did. They dressed for the cameras, I thought. I dressed for the reckoning. As the ceremony moved closer to start, I wandered near the buffet to check on the seating. A woman with a clipboard approached, brisk and efficient. She looked me up and down once. "Ma'am," she said, "can you clear the dishes in Section B? They're starting to pile up." Quindell stood no more than 10 feet away, heard it, saw it, didn't blink. I turned to the woman. "I'm not here to serve plates," I said. "I'm here to serve facts." Then I walked past her, sat front row, and folded my napkin across my lap. Calm, still, intentional. During the speeches, they thanked Nalaya's side, her mentors, her teachers, her circle. Nothing from my side was even mentioned. No old church friends, no cousin Mildred, who used to babysit Quindell while I worked 12-hour shifts. Just nothing. I watched them on stage, but I wasn't focused on their words anymore. I was watching their rhythm, their patterns. I was listening for the right silence to cut through. Halfway through the ceremony, I opened my phone under the table. Quiet. Nobody noticed. I pulled up the folder I'd labeled inheritance. Not the money, but the truth. Screenshots of every payment, bank transfers, messages that started with "Mama, we just need a little help." A video clip of me handing over the keys to the car. I gathered everything into a backup folder, saved it again on the drive. I didn't flinch. I didn't sweat. I pulled out a sticky note from my wallet and wrote, "Since no one wanted me in the photo album, I made a folder of my own." I folded it in half and slid it in with the USB. Applause erupted for Nalaya's vows. Tears, smiles, camera flashes. I smiled too, not out of joy, out of precision. "A storm don't need permission to roll in," I whispered. "It just waits for the right sky." I got there before the lights came on. The hall was still half lit, just a skeleton of chandeliers waiting to be shown off. I walked in with no one greeting me, and I didn't expect them to. Same dress, same shoes. But this time, I wore the napkin like a badge, folded, pinned to my chest, as steady as my breath. Security hesitated when I gave my name. I could see the woman with the clipboard whisper something, eyes darting like she forgot to print my name. She hadn't. They'd left it off on purpose. "Tell them Miss Gentry came to return what was borrowed," I said, calm as ever. They let me through. I picked a seat near the back, not out of shame, but strategy. I wanted to watch. Folks trickled in one by one, greeting each other like old friends. I watched them pass me, most not even recognizing me or pretending not to. I just sat there watching. They tried to delete me, I thought, but I walk in fully backed up. The slideshow started after the first toast. Happy music, smiling faces, pictures edited to perfection. Then came the slide. Thank you, Mr. Gerald Creed, for financing the wedding vehicle. I didn't blink, just adjusted the pin on my chest and leaned back. Then another banner unrolled, proud to merge into the Creed legacy. Applause. Quindell smiled. Nalaya lifted her glass. Not a single soul said my name. Behind me, I heard a whisper. Didn't his mama raise him alone? Where is she? I didn't turn around, just thought to myself, I'm not missing, I'm misnamed. Later, the room shifted into that soft energy people fake when they know a camera's live. A live stream started. Nalaya, now mid-toast, said with a wide smile, and to Auntie Gentry, thanks for attending. The chat on the screen exploded. Who's Auntie Gentry? Is that his mom or her mom's friend? I stood, not quick, not dramatic, just firm. I walked toward the mic, slow and steady. Then Quindell stepped in front of me. Took the mic like it was his right. We built this from love, he said. Some people just can't let go of the past. We had no help, only each other. Gasps weren't loud, just low and real. I didn't say a word. I walked over to the tech guy, handed him the flash drive, and leaned in. Play this next, I said. Then I turned to the room. If you're going to tell a story, I said, make sure you ain't erasing the one who paid for the ink. The screen changed. First, bank transfers, thousands over time. Labels read, car down payment, venue deposit, last-minute flowers. Then a voice memo, Mama, just one more time, please. The room fell still. Then a picture, me handing him the keys. Then another, Nalaya carrying bags from a high-end store. Then a bank record, cosigner, Lavora May Gentry. No music, no noise, just the truth. Quindell looked like someone pulled the floor from under him. Nalaya's smile cracked. I didn't look at them. I looked straight ahead. Then I turned and walked down the middle aisle. No rush, no shame. Nalaya opened her mouth to say something, but I raised my hand. No words, just my back. I walked out the front door, where everyone could see. They wanted my silence, I said under my breath, so I gave them the loudest kind. I didn't rush the morning. I moved slow, on purpose. Woke up to birds instead of thoughts. The house felt different now, same walls, same worn floor, but somehow lighter. Not like something had left, but like something had finally settled. I opened the kitchen window, let the breeze touch my face. Switched the dial from news to jazz. Let it fill the room like perfume. Every corner used to whisper his name. Quinn did this. Quinn used to sit there. Quinn left that mark. Today it was quiet, and that quiet didn't hurt. My eyes landed on the photo of him on the shelf. I didn't turn it face down this time. I just looked at it and said, "You were mine, for a season." Then I started packing up old things, not out of anger, just to make space. I wasn't clearing him out. I was reclaiming what was mine. I didn't cut him off, I said aloud, stacking papers into boxes. I just stopped putting him before myself. 2 days later, a message came through. I didn't know how bad it looked. Can we talk? I left it sitting there for hours, didn't rush to open it, didn't rehearse what I'd say. I waited 2 full days before he showed up at my door, flowers in hand, some grocery store bouquet, wrapped tight like it was trying to be more than it was. I opened the door, but didn't smile. "Hi, Mama." I stepped aside, let him in, nothing more. He sat at the kitchen table like he used to. Awkward, fidgety. "We got caught up," he said. "It all moved fast, and Nalaya meant well." I let him talk, didn't nod, didn't help him with the words. He looked up, waiting for some soft landing. This isn't about how bad it looked, I said. It's about how easy it was for y'all to forget me. He nodded. Not from understanding, but from being cornered by truth. I took the flowers, walked to the sink, and placed them there, still wrapped, still tight. Then I sat back down. That was all. A few days later, I went back to church. Miss Zephyr waved me in like I'd never been gone. The quilt circle had a spot open. I sat down. A young woman joined us. Said she'd just left her husband. Said she felt invisible. I didn't give advice, just listened. After a while, I folded a napkin from the snack table into an iris and placed it in her hand. She didn't speak. She just nodded. That was enough. And for a split second, I saw my mother doing the same thing decades ago at a family reunion. Her hands older but steady, her face tired but peaceful. I thought motherhood meant never letting go, I thought. Turns out it also means knowing when to. That afternoon, I sat out on the porch and pulled the folder out. Inheritance, not the money, but the truth. I went through it page by page, screenshots, bank statements, notes scribbled in anger. I looked at it all like a museum of what I used to carry. Then I lit the burn barrel, fed it slow, receipt by receipt, message by message, one paper at a time. Not from hate, but release. The last paper I burned was a note I'd written months ago. They called it help. I called it survival. The fire cracked softly as the paper curled. Then it was gone. Later, I poured myself a glass of sweet tea and sat by the window. No music, no words, just me and the street, and the sky that didn't need my permission to be wide and quiet. I didn't wonder if they'd call, didn't hope they would, didn't dread if they didn't. Healing don't always sound like laughter, I whispered. Sometimes it sounds like silence finally kept.